This EDUKWEST interview is brought to you by our friends at Teach Street. Learn something new. Teach Street is an online community for people who love to learn and an easy way for teachers, schools and students to connect and find each other, local or online. Visit them over at teachstreet.com. Here's the interview. Video recording for EDUKWEST is provided by Whatburner. Take Skype video to the next level. Record, edit, upload at vodburner.com. So, hi everyone and welcome. This is EDUKWEST, and as every week we are on the search for better education. This time I am very happy to be joined by Osman Rashid. He is the CEO of Kno and also chairman over at Chegg. Osman, delighted to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So, let me start maybe with a personal note. Although being sometimes in my articles a little critical with some of the moves maybe you have made in the past, so it's even a greater pleasure to have you on the program today, and it's great talking to you finally.
Well, good to be here.
Then you say, with your love of startups and having a look a little bit at what you studied back then, and basically amongst all the possibilities you had, why did you choose education out of that mass of certainly interesting possibilities to launch a startup?
You know, I think one of the things that happened when we were building Chegg, we were targeting to be a Craigslist for colleges. Mm-hmm. And we thought there was a niche market on a broader scale that we could attack. And so as we got into the company, as we got deeper in understanding what the customers were looking for, we found out that textbooks were still a huge problem. And we remembered our own days in college when we had to pay so much money for textbooks, and then at the end, when you take them back to the bookstore, they would just give you a few dollars for it. And, you know, all the pain and emotion came right back. Mm-hmm. And like, my God, this problem has gotten worse than ever before, and we have an opportunity to do something about it. And we can call it a happy accident, or we looked at the data and we found that textbooks was something which was a huge market, growing faster than ever, mm-hmm. but with a very clear problem from the consumer perspective that wasn't getting solved. So we jumped right.
Yeah, that's right.
But we wanted to do something different, not just be in a used book player, and deliver immediate value for the consumer. The companies that I'm attracted to are the ones which can begin to deliver immediate results versus, you know, waiting 2-3 years for something to happen.
And so I would say here's a combination. What we sometimes hear that an entrepreneur encountered a certain problem, what you certainly had from your own college and university experience. However, then also seeing the opportunity in the market. And I think what is interesting, would you say, was it the logic consequence that you started Chegg, and that was in 2004, and that you then said, okay, with textbook rental, and I mean now also Chegg have added e-textbooks, so they certainly shaped the business a little bit too, but would you say where Chegg ended, sort of no took over for you? Was it a logic consequence to then launch Kno as a separate company? Because I asked myself, why didn't you just say, okay, Chegg spreads now and does what Kno does today?
See, Kno and Chegg are fundamentally different companies. Kno is more about education software, and Chegg is more about education services. So what we are doing at Kno is we are going deeper into how people learn and how should they interact with textbooks, much deeper into the learning. And as you can see from Chegg, they have acquired a lot of services around the textbook. They just acquired Zinch. They acquired Student of Fortune. They acquired Cramster. They acquired CourseRank. All the services which a student wants. And I think, the way Kno is working very definitively is we want to change the way students learn in the digital world. That's our core fundamental concept. And when Kno started, our concept was that you need a tablet in order to bring this change. And we were building the tablet even before the iPad was announced. Our vision was you need a tablet, which I think is holding true because of the iPad. And so we fundamentally, all we did was we said, well, let's accelerate 2012 to 2011 because we were never going to be a long-term hardware player company anyway, and got the company to the point where we are building learning software which improves how a student learns. So that's our core fundamental thing. I wouldn't be surprised in the future as needed, we begin to integrate Chegg's education services into our own platform. So all those things are entirely possible. And we're really focused on the iPad. That's our biggest area of work that we're doing, and I think it's I think they'll fit really well in the long term.
And I'm happy that you mentioned your own efforts in building really a dedicated tablet for students. And so back then we were obviously discussing this, the iPad. What was it that maybe didn't go 100% well? I think I remember that you told All Things D back then that you were maybe a little bit surprised by how the iPad took off. Compared to, it's not only that the Kno tablet had those problems, what we see about other tablet builders as well. So do you think it is really that Apple succeeded in giving the customer what they wanted at an, we can say, quite incredible price point? Or were there other constraints maybe to the Kno tablet? Some people said maybe it's not the best thing that you had the two screens, it's a little bit too big. What's your take now looking back on that? Probably the last year, or I think it was still in the news till the end of last year, so till the end of 2010.
We really built a computer company in 13 months and took a product from nothing into complete design, and even to the point where we were product waiting on the shelf to be shipped. Our long-term plan was to be a software company, but we were building a tablet because we said in order to propel education forward, somebody has to do something dramatic. And we said we are the kind of company that would go take that risk. But the way we built our hardware and software platform, they were independent of each other, that we were able to strip out the software really fast and put it to work on an iPad. And for us, internally, it was really never a, oh my God, the sky is falling, what's going to happen? Because we'd always said by end of 2012, the dominant player in our financial model would be other tablets, not our own. And we were excited to accelerate everything to 2011 versus continuing with the hardware because we didn't need to.
And would you, from your position today, would you still say that there is room for a tablet dedicated to education only? Like, for example, we have those efforts in India of the 35 or maybe now more towards $50 tablet. And so maybe at a lower price point, is there some room for a dedicated device, or do you think the iPad is so advanced and also so dominant that you would say at least for your company, that's the way to go?
I think the only other, in my opinion, the only other way other tablet manufacturers are going to be able to compete with the iPad is going to be on price.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody has to come up with a sub $300, a $299 or below tablet for students
Mm-hmm.
at the right size. Because if it gets too small, it doesn't make sense. And for global acceptance, it has to become even cheaper than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's only a matter of time. There's enough work happening and technology improving every year. It's only a matter of time before the price begins to drop further. So I think in 2 years, we'll see tablets in a lot of other places.
Mm-hmm.
But to compete with iPad, somebody needs to come with a much cheaper tablet.
Yeah, I think so too, that if there is a certain market, it's definitely in the lower price ranges, and as you said, definitely for study purposes, it can't get too small, although we see, I think for consumers in general, that there is a certain possibility, I would say, in having a little bit a smaller tablet, but as you said, education and then e-textbooks definitely require a certain screen size. And would you say for you as the CEO of Kno, do you actually see the value in the device itself, or would you say that the value is actually within the course material itself and the application, then what you build?
Yeah, hardware only goes so far. Hardware needs to give you a good experience it needs to be responsive, right? Technology's job in this whole thing is to give you a responsive product. It's the applications that you develop on top of the technology which give you the intelligence on how the software how you interact with the software. But if the hardware is, not responsive, that if I try to highlight and my highlight doesn't follow my finger, it's lagging, then it's a bad student experience, right? So good technology is fundamental to user experience, but eventually it is the application and the software and the content and what you do with it that's eventually going to win the customer over. Mm-hmm. And that's where our focus is today, is the learning objectives and how does the student interact on digital as compared to physical.
So the textbook space, of course, itself, then more precisely what Kno focuses on the e-textbook space. I mean, we can't really say that there's nothing going on. There's actually quite a bit going on. So, and what is Kno's approach to transforming maybe a traditional textbook, but also building an e-textbook compared to I see very, I would say, different approaches in the market. So we have something like I can say InkLink, the way I see it, is highly individualized, also interesting, but maybe I would be worried a little bit about scalability. Then I have somebody like Scroll Motion, for example, not targeting the end user, but more going like delivering solutions to publishers. And with Kno, you are in education, but for the App Store in general, one of the most downloaded apps. I think at one point it was one textbook every 8 seconds. So apparently there's quite a bit of scalability. And how do you take the subject or the matter of a textbook and then make it an e-textbook? Do you, I think I have read that you even think of building or having mechanisms to make this automated, but maybe you can take us a little bit through the process. That would be great.
So let's talk about conceptually how do we think about it. At Kno, our approach to education is that the best way to handle the physical to digital transition is to come up with a really good transitional method. So what we have done, what we said was, the textbooks in their physical form, other than price and being heavy, content-wise have worked because we all got here. They're pretty good textbooks. Pretty smart people have used them to get to this point. And what we said was, in this transition, the first thing we have to do is get the physical book into digital, so a student feels comfort level that what my friend in the class or my professor is teaching is similar. Mm-hmm. Then we said, once we have that, let's give them a lot of content, which is why we have more than 100,000 textbooks already in our catalog, which is a huge factor for a lot of students that's why they're downloading the app so many times, because they are finding a lot of textbooks.
It's very compelling, yeah.
Then the next thing we said was that in order to give them a slightly different experience, that when you have, sorry, my screen jumped up. When you have the digital book in front of you, how do you interact with it? And as you are highlighting and marking things as important, the way students learn that the value of the textbook in terms of content goes down as the semester goes by because your own notes begin to become more valuable to you as a student. But how do we pull those things out and make them available for you? Or if a student wants to quiz themselves, for example, the Quiz Me feature, that how can you double tap on an image and hide all the labels and do that across 100,000 textbooks, not just across a few. Mm-hmm. And do it in an incremental fashion where we are using a rapid incremental innovation strategy. That rather than giving a big, huge change in one shot to the student, we're going to get to the end point that we think where we need to be headed, but we're going to get over there with incremental changes, which is what we've been doing, as you can see with all the updates we've been putting out there. But also more updates which are going to be coming over the next few months. The rate is only going to increase for us to bring innovation to the student. And so the approach is rapid incremental innovation. Build a proper transition from the physical to digital. And in the process, with the student, with the faculty, with the publishers, begin to create a path forward, which allows technology to play a big part in embracing the future. And so those are the key ingredients for us that we're taking forward. And so far, as you said, a lot of students are downloading the book. A lot of them are interacting and, spending a lot of time using our textbooks during the day.
This is actually quite interesting because recently I read a study published in, I think, early 2011, January this year, where apparently, they must have carried out the study in 2010, and they said that they found out that students still wanted to have real textbooks, but I think this whole industry is evolving so quickly and changing that, just in a few months, probably half a year, these numbers have become outdated and are not correct anymore, or we cannot make a statement like that anymore. What would you say, what's your take on the other point that some people say, yes, it's an innovative approach, and we definitely see it going into this direction. On the other hand, we don't see that, for example, disruption about the price point is really happening, because they argue an average 25% saved on a textbook wouldn't make a great difference for the student at the end of the day. What do you think?
I think e-textbooks are certainly cheaper, and it's an evolving industry. And the publishers themselves, in many cases, are experimenting with pricing. And many of these are public companies who can't just suddenly take their product and slash it by half. They have a financial responsibility to their investors. These are for-profit companies. They are not, the government organizations, which, so we have to think of them as these are companies which, the country has, over time embraced as publishers. But they are for-profit industries, an industry which is for-profit. And so they have to carefully go through pricing strategies so they don't completely hurt themselves. What they are beginning to recognize is that even if they decrease the price of an e-textbook by half, over the long term they will come out ahead. And that's the learning they're going through right now. And I think 2012 will see a lot of stability and decrease in pricing across the board as the publishers and their experiments and begin to understand how does e-textbooks work. It's all happening really fast. So they need a little bit of time to grasp how does this fundamentally change their business.
Absolutely. But that's interesting news or good news that you share with us.
Yeah, it's all good news. I mean, we are talking to the publishers and they're all actively trying to figure out what is the right price point. Now, in terms for the student, if you take a look even today, almost 2/3 of students buy new textbooks, even though there's a used book option and there's the option to rent. Majority of students are still buying new textbooks. And so there's clearly enough people who feel comfortable with the new book price point. Long term, the victory of digital textbooks is going to be that it will be cheaper, but the value of interacting with the digital content and the way you learn is going to be significantly higher. Now, if you take a look at the cost of textbooks in the bigger spectrum of what a student has to spend to go through school, it's a smaller part. Like a student can easily spend $20,000 per year in school and $1,000 for textbooks. The reason textbook hurts more is you have to dig into your pocket at the start of the semester and pay for books, which is an anchor point in your course. Where digital textbook is really going to bring it together for people is the price will be cheaper. However, the value that you will get out of a digital content and how you interact with it, how better you learn with it, how better you interact with your professors and your students in the classroom and you get help, will increase, the value will increase so much that even if they couldn't get the book at 10%, they'll be comfortable with it because it will give a certain value in return.
I understand, yeah.
It's going to be a combination of price and value, where value will replace some of the concerns around price.
You explained the conceptual difference between Chegg and Kno at the beginning of our interview. When you gave up the position as CEO, did you feel that for the textbook rental space you had accomplished what you wanted, so that you said Kno is, at least at the moment, the more exciting and challenging company for yourself in your own evolution as an entrepreneur?
So, it fundamentally comes down to different kinds of CEOs. I am actually more of a startup, hands dirty, at the very earlier stage of the company CEO. And a person like Dan Rosenzweig, who's an awesome CEO, he's really good at taking the companies and scaling them to the next level. And my interest over the long term was to go broader into education, go into K-12, go into learning objectives, learning moments, and how's digital going to come in, and really come down back at that level of company building. And I wanted to, it made sense to do it separately. So, Ben Horowitz wrote an awesome blog on this topic of CEOs, saying there's the wartime CEO and the peacetime CEO. Wartime CEO is more the early stage startup guy, and the peacetime CEO is the one in which the model has been figured out to a certain degree. And I think I'm more towards the earlier stage, trying to really get in deep into the product and build something and try to figure out the model to a certain point, scale it, and then bring in the right kind of operation team, which I believe can take it to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. I think the early times are as exciting as they are challenging, and then when it's established, you also need the right person. And as you said, Dan Rosenzweig is definitely adding new interesting features to Chegg, and also shaping the company in, I believe, the right direction. So it would be interesting to talk with him one day as well. Give me your take on what do you think the student or the customer in the end really wants. How do you see, of course, the textbook space evolve, and how do you think a little bit in a broader sense, as you said, you are interested in various niches or segments of the education market. Where do you see it all going? And I mean, it's happening so quickly, but for yourself, where do you see it's most exciting or most challenging for you?
I think the ultimate goal we are trying to come to is when a student is learning, how do you bring them the right content, the right information in context to what they're learning right at that moment. I think that is somewhere in there is in our opinion, the future for education, which will make learning more interesting. That things have to appear in a beautiful fashion in context to what is it that you're looking to learn.
Great.
And we think of textbook as, textbook is a body of knowledge which is required to master a particular topic. So a textbook, while it's in a physical format, maybe, it's physical, but the concept of textbook remains. And the key is going to be that you have all this knowledge, piece of content put together. How is it that you're going to learn? And how is it that we're going to change the way people learn, especially when they're coming into the digital world, because there's no path defined for anyone to go and say this is exactly how it's going to be. So our approach is we're going to work with the students, with the publishers, with the faculty and the administration, and help figure out what that path is in an incremental fashion, versus trying to say we think this is how it's supposed to be, because I don't think anybody knows exactly what it's supposed to be. But we are working our way, and we're learning a lot of what students really want to do in our product, and those are the areas which we are further pursuing.
For people interested in knowing or getting in touch with you a little bit more, we should say that you are of course active in social media, so they could tweet at Osman Rashid on Twitter. Other good ways to engage with, let's say maybe you're a very busy man, but with the company, what is best for our audience to get more information on Kno and what you do?
There's we have if you're a publisher or you have content, we have publishers at Kno.com, because that goes to the right people. If you're in business development and you want to work with us, there's, bd@kno.com. So all these email addresses are on the web. And, while many people think when you send an email, I wonder where it goes, we have designed it that it goes to the key people in the company, and not just one, multiple people, so that we are being very responsive to many of these things. So if people just try those methods, depending on what they want to do to communicate with us, we are extremely responsive as a company. Not just to customers, but to also partners and educators. I mean, we have a lot of professors who are reaching out to us that they want to use our app, in their class. And how is it that they can get access to textbooks and things like that? So we try to help them out with many of those things.
Great. So a very open and I think for both sides then beneficial social media strategy. Good. Well, thank you so much for giving me of your precious time, Osman. It was a delight speaking with you and getting educated about Kno, your take on, of course, the textbook industry, but education as a whole. And it was a pleasure talking with you today. Okay.
Thank you so much.